The auction ended at midnight. Park was the only bidder. Nobody wanted the old research facility on 7. The locals called it the dead house. They said strange lights flickered in its windows at night. They said anyone who entered never came back the same, did not believe in ghost stories. He had created enough real ones during his years as a sniper. The shuttle dropped him on the moon's surface at dawn. 7 had no real sun, only the dim glow of a dying star that painted everything in shades of rust and copper. Stood at the landing pad with a single bag over his shoulder and his old rifle case in his hand. Beside him, his dog sniffed the thin air and whined softly. "I know," said, "it smells wrong here, but wrong is what we need." He was 67 years old. His hair had turned white during the border wars. His hands still remembered the weight of a rifle better than the touch of another person. The Terran colonial marines had called him the ghost of Andromeda. He had killed more enemies than he could count, and every single face visited him in his dreams. The facility rose from the barren ground like a metal tomb. It was 3 times larger than the auction listing had shown. Tall walls of black metal stretched toward the orange sky. Strange symbols covered every surface, carved in a language that had been dead for 40,000 years. The Empire had built this place. Then they had vanished, along with every other member of their species, in a single night. Approached the main entrance. The door was sealed with a complex lock that should have required biology to open, but someone had already broken through long ago. The metal was bent inward like something had pushed its way out. He stepped inside, followed close at his heels, growling at shadows. The interior was dark but not empty. Dust covered everything in thick layers. Old equipment lined the walls, machines whose purpose could not guess. Everything was built for beings taller and thinner than humans. They had been elegant creatures, according to the historical records, graceful, advanced beyond human understanding. And then they were nothing. Found a control panel near the entrance. He touched it without expecting a response, but lights flickered to life immediately. Power hummed through the walls. Somewhere deep below, machinery began to wake. "That should not be possible," he whispered. The facility had been abandoned for 40,000 years. No power source lasted that long. Nothing lasted that long. Yet the lights burned bright, and the air began to circulate through ancient vents and barked at something could not see. He spent the first hours exploring the upper levels. He found living quarters, research stations, and storage rooms filled with containers he could not open. Everything was preserved perfectly, as if the scientists had simply stepped out for lunch and never returned. Then he found the elevator. It descended into the ground, far deeper than the surface structure suggested. The auction listing had mentioned 2 underground levels, but the elevator panel showed 15. Someone had hidden the true size of this place. Someone had not wanted anyone to know what was down there. Press the button for the lowest level. The elevator did not move. A red symbol flashed on the panel and a recorded message played in the language. He did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Warning, danger, do not proceed. He returned to the upper levels as night fell. 7's nights were absolute, black as the space between stars. Set up a small camp in what seemed to be a break room. He ate dried rations. He gave water and food. He tried not to think about the darkness pressing against the windows. That was when he found the writing on the wall. It was hidden behind a fallen cabinet, carved deep into the metal with something sharp. 7 different languages, including one recognized: human, English. The message was simple. Do not wake them, do not free them, do not become them. His blood went cold. Humans had been here, recently enough to leave a warning in a modern language, but no human expedition to 7 had ever been recorded. No human had purchased this facility before him. Officially, at least. Began to bark, not his normal bark, but the sound he made when he sensed danger. The sound from his military days when they had worked together in the war. grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. The facility had no external lights, but something was glowing in the distance, deep in the ground where the lowest levels waited. Blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. It grew brighter as he watched. Then slowly it faded. And from somewhere far below, a sound began. Not quite a voice, not quite a machine, something in between, broadcasting on frequencies that made his teeth ache and his old wounds throb. A signal, a call, a message that had been waiting 40,000 years to be heard. Sat in the darkness with his rifle across his knees, pressed against his leg, shaking. The signal continued all night, rising and falling like breath. He had come here to escape his past, to find peace in isolation, to die quietly, far from the wars and the killing and the faces that haunted his sleep. But something else lived in this place, something that had been waiting, and now that the ship arrived 3 days later. Watched it descend through the copper sky, a small research vessel with Terran Science Corps markings on its hull. He had not called anyone. He had not sent any messages, but someone had heard the signal from the depths of the facility and someone had come. 2 figures emerged from the ship. The first was a woman in her 30s, tall and thin, with short black hair and eyes that moved constantly, studying everything. The second was a man recognized immediately. Older now, within his hair and new scars on his face, but unmistakable. I said. The man stopped walking. His hand moved toward his weapon, then froze. Recognition spread across his face like sunrise. Commander Park whispered, "They told me you were dead." I wanted them to believe that. The woman stepped forward, impatient. "You two can reunite later. I am. 3 days ago, this location began broadcasting on a frequency that has not been used in 40,000 years. A frequency. Do you understand what that means?" Understood. There had been silence since their disappearance. No signals, no messages, no evidence that they had ever existed except their empty buildings scattered across 1,000 worlds. Until now. "I want you both to leave," he said. Laughed. It was not a kind sound. "This is the discovery of the century, perhaps the discovery of human history, and you want us to leave because you bought this land at auction. I want you to leave because something is wrong here. The power should not work. The signal should not exist. And there are warnings carved into the walls telling us not to go deeper." Warnings from whom? Could not answer that question. He did not know who had carved the message. He only knew that they had been afraid. Stepped between them. He had been a young soldier under his command during the border wars. A good soldier, loyal, brave, but something had changed in his eyes since then. Something heavy. "Commander," he said quietly, "I have orders. The Science Corps wants to know what is down there. If we do not find out, they will send others. More people, soldiers. This is happening whether you want it or not." Looked at his former subordinate for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Then I am coming with you." They descended together. The elevator accepted them this time, had brought equipment that could bypass the security systems. As they went deeper, the architecture began to change. The elegant curves of design gave way to something older, rougher. The walls were carved from black stone instead of metal. Strange symbols covered every surface, symbols that did not match any known language. "This is not," whispered. Her voice had lost its arrogance. "This is older, much older." "How much older?" asked. "I do not know. Nothing should be older than the. They were the first civilization in this galaxy. Every species agrees on that. But someone had built this place before them. Someone had carved these tunnels and these chambers long before the Empire rose, and they had built their facility directly on top of it, like a cage around a sleeping beast. They found the stasis pods on the 7th level. Thousands of them stretched into the darkness, rows upon rows of cylindrical containers made from crystal and metal. Each one glowed with faint blue light. Each one contained something. Not something else. approached the nearest pod and looked inside. His stomach turned. The creature within had no fixed shape. It flickered like a broken hologram, shifting between forms that his brain could not process. One moment it seemed humanoid. The next it was something with too many limbs. Then it was geometric, angular, impossible. "What are they?" His voice shook. Was scanning the pods with her equipment. Her hands trembled. Dimensional instability. These creatures do not exist fully in our reality. They are between dimensions, caught in a state that should not be possible. Began to growl. Followed the dog's gaze down the row of pods. One of them was open. The glass was shattered from the inside. The space within was empty. "Something got out," he said. Wen raised his weapon. "I do not know, recently. The glass is still falling." They moved deeper, faster now, fear driving their steps. Found a control room filled with equipment. Screens covered the walls, dark and dead. She managed to activate one of them. Video began to play. Security footage, 40,000 years old. They watched the scientists working in the pod's chamber. They watched them taking samples from the creatures. They watched them celebrating their discoveries, their graceful bodies moving with joy and pride. Then the footage changed. One of the creatures escaped. It did not attack the scientists. It touched them, and they began to change. Their bodies flickered, shifted, became wrong. They screamed without sound as their forms twisted into something between dimensions. Within hours, the entire facility was transformed. Within days, according to the timestamps, every world had gone silent. The empire did not die. It was not destroyed by war or disease or natural disaster. It was converted. Every single member of the species, transformed into creatures like the ones in the pods. Turned off the screen. Her face was white as bone. "They are still out there," she said. "Trillions of them. The entire population changed into these things, hiding somewhere in the galaxy, waiting." Heard something behind them. A sound like whispers in a language he almost understood. He turned, raising his rifle. Shadows moved at the edge of his vision. Shadows that should not exist in a room with no light source to cast them. "It is here," he said. "The one that escaped. It has been watching us since we arrived." The creature wore shadows like skin. It moved without walking, flickering between spaces as if distance meant nothing to it. And it continued to speak in the voice of his wife, the woman who had died 15 years ago while he was fighting on the other side of the galaxy. He whispered before he could stop himself. "Yes," the creature said, "and no, I am what remains when love becomes eternal, when memory never fades, when death loses its meaning." Fired his weapon. The plasma bolt passed through the creature without touching it. The thing laughed with its laugh, gentle and warm, and its heart broke all over again. "Bullets cannot hurt us. Fire cannot burn us. We exist between your reality and something greater. They called us the Hollow because that is what your kind sees when it looks at transcendence. Emptiness. But we are not empty. We are everything the universe was meant to become." Stepped forward. Her fear had transformed into something else. Curiosity, wonder, recognized the look. He had seen it on the faces of soldiers who had given up hope and found something dark to replace it. "What happened to those?" she asked. "They evolved. They became like us. Every single one of them elevated beyond the limits of flesh and time. No more disease, no more death, no more loneliness. They exist now in a state of perfect connection, each mind touching every other forever." "That sounds beautiful," whispered. "It is." "No," his voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "It is not beautiful. It is consumption. I have seen predators before. I have watched them use words and promises to lure their prey. You are not offering transcendence. You are offering erasure." The hollow turned to face him. Its form shifted, becoming more solid, more human. It wore his face now, perfect and young, the way she had looked on their wedding day. "You are tired, Park. I can feel it in your soul, the weight of all those deaths, the faces that visit you every night, the loneliness that grows deeper each year. I can take all of that away. I can give you peace. Peace is not something you give. Peace is something I earn, and I have not earned it yet. The hollow smiled sadly. Then you will continue to suffer. How very human. It flickered and vanished, leaving them alone in the darkness, but knew it had not gone far. It was watching, waiting, learning. They made camp in the control room, sealing the doors as best they could. Lay across the entrance, his eyes never closing. Sat with his rifle ready while searched through the records, trying to understand what they had found. "Why did you really come here?" asked quietly. Did not answer at first. He watched the shadows outside the door, remembering the sound of his wife's voice. "My last mission," he said finally. "The colonies on Reach 7, do you remember?" His face darkened. "I remember." The enemy had captured children, hundreds of them. They put machines in their brains, turned them into soldiers, made them fight against us. We tried everything to free them. Nothing worked. The machines were too deep, too integrated. You did what you had to do. I killed children one by one through my scope, watching their faces as they fell, telling myself it was mercy, telling myself they were already dead. His voice cracked. I still see them every time I close my eyes. I came here to escape, to find a place where the silence might finally be louder than the screaming. Looked up from her work. Her eyes were wet. "I understand," she said softly. "I have my own reasons for being here." "What reasons?" She pulled back her sleeve, revealing skin covered in dark veins. "Neural decay syndrome. My brain is dying piece by piece. I have maybe 2 years left, probably less. I wanted to discover something important before the end, something that would outlast me." She laughed bitterly. "I did not expect to find the end of everything instead." Stared at the floor. "I should tell you both something. I have been sending reports to Terran Command since we arrived. A military fleet is coming. Admiral Shin is leading it personally." His blood went cold. She wants the Hollow as weapons. She believes they can be controlled, used against humanity's enemies. She does not understand what they really are. No one who wants that kind of power ever understands. Had continued working through their conversation. Now she stood, her face pale. "I found something. The scientists who built this containment facility, they knew they could not destroy the Hollow, but they found something else, a weakness." "What weakness?" "The Hollow exist between dimensions. They anchor themselves to our reality through specific frequencies. The discovered a counter-frequency, a sound that can collapse those anchors. It would destroy every Hollow in range." "Then we use it," said. "There is a problem. The device that broadcasts the frequency is in the core chamber, the deepest level of the facility, and once activated it cannot be turned off remotely. Someone has to stay with it. Someone has to die." Silence filled the room. Outside, the shadows continued to move, and somewhere far above, the first ships of Admiral Shin's fleet entered orbit around 7. The choice was coming. Could feel it approaching like a bullet he could not dodge. Someone would have to decide what humanity was worth. Someone would have to pay the price. He looked at his companions, a dying scientist seeking meaning, a soldier carrying guilt he never spoke about, and himself, a ghost who had been looking for a reason to stop haunting the galaxy. The fell from the sky like metal rain. Watched from the facility's upper windows as Admiral Shin's forces landed across the barren surface of 7. Hundreds of soldiers in black armor, vehicles carrying heavy weapons, and command units bristling with communication equipment. This was not a research expedition. This was an invasion. "She brought an army," said. She always did believe in overwhelming force. Checked his rifle one more time. His hands were steady despite his age. Some skills never faded. How long until they breached the main entrance? 20 minutes, maybe less. was still working at the control panels, mapping a route to the core chamber. Her hands moved quickly, but her body was failing. The dark veins had spread up her neck, and she paused sometimes to catch her breath. "I found the path," she said, "but there are stasis pods along the way, thousands of them. If the Admiral's soldiers start shooting down there, they might break the containment. Then we need to reach the core chamber before they get that far. Turn 2. Can you slow them down?" Nodded slowly. "The main corridor has 3. One man with the right weapons could hold them for hours." He paused. "You know what you are asking me to do." "I know. I have a daughter. She is 12 years old. Her mother died when she was young, and I have been her only family since then." His voice cracked slightly. "If I do this, she will be alone." Placed a hand on his former soldier's shoulder. "If we do not stop the hollow here, she will be worse than alone. She will be converted. Every human in the galaxy will be. That is what we are fighting for." Closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the fear was gone. Only determination remained. "Tell her I love her. Tell her I chose to stay human." "I will, I promise." They separated at the elevator, went up toward the main entrance, and went down toward the core, stayed close to his master, sensing the danger all around them. The descent took nearly an hour. Each level was darker than the last, the architecture giving way completely to the ancient stone tunnels carved by something far older. The stasis pods grew more numerous as they went deeper, their blue light casting strange shadows on the walls. And the hollow followed them. It did not attack. It simply watched, flickering at the edges of their vision, whispering in voices they almost recognized. Friends, family, lovers, it knew their memories and it used them like weapons. "Your mother is worried about you," it said in an old woman's voice. "She wants you to rest. She wants you to stop fighting." "My mother has been dead for 20 years, replied without stopping. "Death is not what you think it is. Death is just a door. I can show you what is on the other side." Above them the sounds of combat began. Plasma fire, explosions, screaming, had engaged the Admiral's forces. He was buying them time with his blood. They reached the 12th level when the first converted soldiers appeared. They had been human once, could still see the shapes of their bodies beneath the flickering dimensional distortion, but their faces were wrong now, stretched and shifting, and their voices spoke in languages that hurt to hear. He fired his rifle. The rounds were designed for hard targets, and they tore through the converted soldiers despite their altered bodies. But each one he killed wore a human face, and each death added to the weight he carried. "Keep moving," he told. "I will hold them here." "You cannot hold them forever." "I do not need forever. I just need long enough." She ran, went with her, guiding her through the dark tunnels, found a position behind a fallen pillar and began to fire. The converted soldiers came in waves, dozens of them, then hundreds. He counted each shot, made each one count. His old skills returned like muscle memory, the years falling away until he was the ghost of Andromeda again, the deadliest sniper in the Terran military. But even ghosts grow tired. He was down to his last magazine when the Admiral herself appeared. Shin walked through the converted soldiers without fear. They parted for her like water around a stone. She was still mostly human, but hollow tendrils wrapped around her arms and neck, pulsing with blue light. Her eyes glowed with something that was not quite madness. "Park," she said, "still fighting wars you cannot win. What have you done to yourself?" "I have evolved. I have become what humanity was always meant to be, immortal, powerful, connected to something greater than this small, frightened life." She stepped closer. "Join us. You have suffered enough. Let me take away your pain." "My pain is what makes me human." Humanity is a disease, a temporary stage on the path to transcendence. The Hollow showed me the truth. They are not monsters. They are the next step in evolution. They consumed an entire species, trillions of beings erased and replaced. Not erased, transformed, elevated, and now it is humanity's turn. She raised her hand and the hollow tendrils reached toward him. You can resist if you want. It will hurt more, but the end will be the same. Everyone becomes us eventually. Everyone joins the song. Thought of dying somewhere above. He thought of running toward the core chamber with a dying body and an unbreakable will. He thought of all the faces that haunted his dreams, all the lives he had taken, all the choices that had brought him here. And he made one more choice. He dropped his empty rifle and pulled the knife from his belt. Not a weapon designed for combat, but a tool his wife had given him decades ago, before the wars, before the death, before the ghosts. A small thing, useless against the power of the hollow. But symbols matter. I am already dead, he said. I died years ago, somewhere between the screaming children and the empty bed where my wife used to sleep. What you see standing here is just the echo, and echoes cannot be converted. He ran at the Admiral with the knife raised. She laughed and reached for him with her corrupted hands. Somewhere far below reached the core chamber. Somewhere far above fell for the last time. And in the space between, an old soldier fought an impossible battle not because he could win, but because fighting was all he had left. The knife cut nothing but air and shadow. Admiral Shin caught's wrist with fingers that flickered between solid and something else. She squeezed, and bones cracked. The knife fell to the stone floor with a small sound that echoed through the chamber like a final heartbeat. You cannot hurt me, she said. Not anymore. I have become part of something eternal. But she did not kill him. Instead, she pulled him deeper into the facility, toward the core chamber where waited. The hollow wanted him to see. They wanted him to understand what was about to happen. The core chamber was vast. Could not see the ceiling, only darkness stretching upward forever. In the center stood a machine older than human civilization, a tower of crystal and metal that hummed with power that made his teeth ache. Stood before it, her hands on the controls, her face pale and determined. Lay at her feet. The dog was injured but alive, still guarding his charge even now. You found it, said. Nodded, the kill frequency device. The scientists designed it as a last resort. Once I activate it, every hollow in range will collapse. Their dimensional anchors will fail. They will cease to exist. Then do it. The range is limited. It will only affect the hollow in this facility. The ones out there, the trillions of converted hiding somewhere in the galaxy, they will survive. And once they learn what we did here, they will come for humanity. Admiral Shin laughed. You see, even if you win this battle, you lose the war. The hollow cannot be stopped. They are inevitable. Transcendence is inevitable. Fighting it only delays the suffering. The hollow manifested fully for the first time. It rose from the shadows behind the Admiral, a creature of impossible angles and shifting forms. It no longer wore face. It had no face at all, only patterns that hurt to observe and a voice that came from everywhere at once. We have been patient, it said. We waited 40,000 years for this moment. When your species first began to spread across the stars, we watched. When you found the ruins and wondered what had happened to them, we waited. And now you are here in the heart of our prison, ready to become what you were always meant to be. Why us? Asked. Why humanity? Because you are perfect. They were elegant but fragile. They broke too easily. But humans, you are built for suffering. You carry your pain and keep walking. You bury your dead and keep building. You face the darkness and keep hopping. That is what we need. That is what will make our song finally complete. His hands trembled on the controls. If I activate this device, I cannot leave. The frequency requires constant adjustment. Someone has to stay and keep it running until every hollow in the facility is destroyed. I know, said. I was going to do it myself. I am dying anyway. My life for everyone else's seemed like a fair trade. It does seem fair, but I am going to do it instead. Shin's grip tightened on his broken wrist. You cannot reach the controls. You cannot even move. Smiled, it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of the ghost of Andromeda, the expression his enemies had seen right before they died. Now. The dog moved faster than anything injured should be able to move. He launched himself at Admiral Shin, teeth finding the flesh of her leg, dragging her down. The hollow tendrils tried to reach him, but was just an animal, just a simple mind without the complexity they needed to corrupt. He could not be converted. He could only bite and tear and hold. Pulled free from Shin's grip, his wrist screamed with pain, but pain was an old friend. He had carried it for decades. He could carry it a little longer. He reached the controls, stepped aside, her eyes filled with tears. "You do not have to do this," she said. "I am already dying. Let me have this. Let my death mean something." "Your death does mean something, but not today." He placed his good hand on her shoulder. "Has a daughter. She is 12 years old and she just lost her father. She needs someone. She needs you. I am a scientist, not a mother. You are human, that is enough." He turned to the machine. "Now go, take and get to the surface. The military ships will evacuate you once the hollow are gone." "They go." She ran, released Admiral Shin and followed, limping but alive. The hollow screamed with 1,000 voices as it watched its prizes escape. Shin pulled herself upright. The bite wounds were already healing, hollow energy knitting her flesh back together. "You are making a mistake," she said. "You are choosing death over eternity, pain over peace, ending over becoming." "I am choosing to be human," activated the device. The sound that emerged was not really a sound. It was something deeper, something that vibrated in dimensions beyond human perception. The hollow began to flicker more intensely, their forms destabilizing, their voices rising to screams. "No," Shin gasped. The tendrils around her arms began to dissolve. "No, this cannot be happening. We are eternal. We are beyond death." "Nothing is beyond death. That is what makes life valuable." The hollow collapsed. One by one, the creatures in the stasis pods flickered and vanished, leaving behind empty glass containers. The shadows retreated. The whispers faded, and Admiral Shin fell to her knees as the corruption left her body. She looked up with clear eyes for the first time. Human eyes, filled with horror at what she had almost become. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she died, her body unable to survive the separation. Sat down beside the machine. His broken wrist throbbed. His old wounds ached. And somewhere deep inside, the faces that had haunted him for so long began to quiet. "I am sorry," he said to no one, to everyone. "For all of it, I am sorry." The machine hummed. The frequency continued. And Park, the ghost of Andromeda, finally found peace in the silence. Reached the surface as the military began evacuation. She carried in her arms and refused to put him down even when the medics tried to treat her. The dark veins on her skin had stopped spreading. Something in the hollow energy had halted her disease. She did not understand it yet. Understanding would come later. 6 months passed. Built a small house on 7, not far from the ruins of the facility. Came to live with her, a quiet girl with her father's eyes and a sadness that would take years to heal. They planted a garden despite the thin soil. They adopted more dogs despite the barren landscape. They began again despite everything. At night told stories about her father, about his courage, about his sacrifice, about what it meant to choose humanity over transcendence. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, they could hear something like a voice in the distance. An old soldier still keeping watch, still protecting them. The galaxy never learned what happened on 7. The military buried the records. The scientists rewrote the reports. Officially, it was a geological instability that destroyed the ancient facility. Nothing more. But somewhere out there in the dark spaces between stars, the hollow waited. Trillions of them, hidden in dimensions humanity could barely perceive. They had lost this battle. They had learned from it. And they were patient. On 7 stood at sunset with beside her. The copper sky blazed with dying light, beautiful in its impermanence, temporary, fragile, human. "Do you think he is at peace?" asked. Looked toward the horizon, toward the place where a soldier had chosen sacrifice over survival. "I think he found what he was looking for," she said. "I think he finally stopped running from the ghosts." The wind blew, the sun set, and life continued, fragile and precious and worth every moment of pain. That was the human way. That was why the Hollow would never truly understand them. And that was why, when the darkness came again, humanity would be ready. Because that was what being human meant. "We need a plan," he said. "Before the Admiral arrives, before the Hollow grows stronger, before we lose the chance to choose." Outside, the creature wearing his wife's face smiled in the darkness. It had heard everything, and it had plans of its own. The shadows smiled with too many teeth, and when it spoke, it used the voice of his dead wife. "Welcome home," it said. "We have been waiting so long for you." E was here now that the power was flowing and the doors were open. It had begun to call. The galaxy would hear that signal soon, and nothing would be the same again.